On a routine Thursday, my phone buzzed with a call that upended my world. My wife's voice, typically calm, trembled with urgency as she pleaded for me to rush home. I leapt to my feet, pulse racing, pressing her to confirm if our children were unharmed, if some calamity had struck. Her response cut off mid-sentence, leaving only a desperate cry, "Come quickly." The usual 20-minute drive home collapsed into 10 as I weaved through traffic, my mind flooded with dread of accidents or intruders. Pulling onto our street, I saw police cars, their flashing lights painting ominous red and blue patterns across our house, chilling my veins. Neighbors lingered at a distance, whispering among themselves. Before I could step out of the car, my 15-year-old son burst from the front door, his frame quaking as he collapsed into my arms. "Dad, don't go inside," he murmured, his voice cracking with terror. "Mom doesn't want you to see it." My stomach twisted. "See what?" I pressed, but he only clung tighter, shaking like a frightened child. Despite his pleas, I needed answers. Carefully, I freed myself, offered a comforting pat, and moved toward the house, utterly unprepared for the shattering truth waiting within. The air inside was heavy, laced with a sharp, metallic tang that set my nerves on edge. The living room hummed with police activity, radios crackling, voices hushed but taut with tension. Flashlights danced across the floor and up the stairs, and then I saw it. The reason for my son's frantic warning. A body lay sprawled on the carpet, partially covered by a white sheet. My mind faltered, struggling to process the sight. An officer shifted, and the sheet slipped, revealing a face I knew all too well. My heart seized. It was Nick, my wife's colleague, whose name had surfaced too often in late-night messages she brushed off as innocent. Across the room, my wife sat on the sofa, her hair disheveled, tears streaking her mascara. Officers flanked her, jotting down notes. She looked up, her eyes wide with fear, and whispered, "I never meant for you to learn this way." My son's words echoed in my head. "Mom doesn't want you to see." The horrific truth wasn't just the body in our home. It was the unraveling of my wife's deception, her affair, and a hidden life now exposed before the police, my traumatized son, and the ruins of our family. The room seemed to constrict, the air growing thicker as police lights pulsed through the windows, casting accusatory shadows across the walls. An officer approached, his voice steady but authoritative, asking me to step outside while they gathered statements. But I stood frozen, my eyes locked on my wife. Her hands trembled as she spoke to a detective, her words stumbling. "It was a mistake," she insisted. "He showed up, we fought." She stopped when she saw me listening, her tears intensifying. But I saw past her performance, not grief, but terror of being unmasked. She faltered, "It's not what it seems. Nick forced his way in." Her story crumbled as officers exchanged doubtful glances. A neighbor's account revealed Nick's car had been spotted at our house multiple times, dismantling her claim of an uninvited visit. Then my son, still shaking, spoke up, his voice soft but unwavering. "Dad, he wasn't a stranger here. He came often. Mom told me to keep it from you." The room fell silent. My wife's face paled, her web of lies collapsing under the weight of our son's truth. This wasn't merely a tragic incident. It was proof of an affair, a concealed life now laid bare. The investigation pivoted from a death to a deeper betrayal, and I realized her panic wasn't about the police. It was about me uncovering the truth she'd fought to hide. My son's words lingered, cutting through every excuse my wife had woven. An officer murmured to the detective, who then spoke loudly enough for all to hear. Neighbors had noticed Nick's car parked at our house repeatedly, sometimes overnight, even during the day. My wife's face collapsed, her voice breaking as she tried to justify it. "Yes, he came here, but it wasn't what you think. He needed my support," she sobbed, but her words sounded empty. I felt no compassion, only a cold determination hardening within me. My son clutched my arm, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want to deceive you, Dad. She made me swear not to tell." I pulled him close, rage simmering beneath my composed surface. He'd been forced to bear her secrets, ensnared in her lies while she carried on her affair in our home. The officer closed his notebook with a snap, his tone somber. "This is more than a domestic matter now. We'll need to scrutinize the evidence thoroughly." My wife's fear shifted, Not of me, but of the consequences she could no longer evade. The body on our floor was only part of the nightmare. Her carefully guarded life was unraveling, and while the police pursued the crime, I was already planning a different kind of reckoning. One that would dismantle everything she thought she'd secured. Hours later, the police cars departed, their lights fading into the night. The neighborhood buzzed with rumors, but inside, our house felt foreign, its walls stained by betrayal. My wife sat at the kitchen table, her face hollow, staring at her hands. My son stayed near me, avoiding her gaze, his silence a loud indictment of her disloyalty. The marriage I'd once cherished died alongside Nick on that carpet. When she finally spoke, her voice was weak. It wasn't supposed to end this way. He understood me in ways you didn't. I raised a hand, my tone cold as ice. Enough. You've said more than enough. The police might have concluded their work, but I was far from finished. That night, I tucked my son into bed, promising he'd never have to hide secrets again. His quiet "thank you, Dad" stung deeper than any of her lies. Standing in the darkened hallway, listening to his steady breathing, I made a vow. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about retribution. The police had exposed her affair. Now I would unearth every deception, every hidden transaction, every secret she thought was safe. She wanted to keep me in the dark, but I was about to show her the devastating power of my silence. The next morning, the house was stiflingly quiet. My wife moved warily, her eyes swollen from crying, but I felt no sympathy. I was no longer her husband. I was her judge. I began with the paper trail. Bank statements, credit card records, anything that might expose her deceit. The evidence was damning. Hotel charges on nights she claimed to be working late. Extravagant dinners paid with our joint account when I was out of town. Cash withdrawals aligned with Nick's supposed business trips. Each receipt clarified the extent of her double life. Then I accessed her laptop, which she'd always guarded fiercely. Unlocked during her fitful sleep, it revealed emails, messages, and photos that confirmed not just an affair, but a deliberate betrayal. She'd boasted to her sister about her thrill, mocked me as predictable, and laughed about her secrecy. Worse, I found plans, conversations with Nick about selling our house, taking our son, and draining me in a divorce. He wasn't just her lover. He was her partner in a scheme to start anew. Her plot had collapsed with his death, but my work was just starting. Armed with evidence, receipts, messages, her own words, I wasn't merely planning to leave her. I was going to dismantle the life she'd built on lies. I had all I needed. Proof of her infidelity, financial records of her deception, and evidence of her intent to destroy me. But exposing her wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the same helplessness she'd forced on me. I meticulously compiled the evidence. Hotel bills, restaurant receipts, cash withdrawals, emails, mocking texts, and neighbor accounts of Nick's frequent visits. It was an arsenal of truth, enough to ensure divorce court would strip her of everything: custody, alimony, respect. But true vengeance required more than a legal win. I duplicated her cruelest messages, the ones ridiculing me as dull and scheming to ruin me, and planned their release where they'd wound most. Her family, who viewed her as flawless, her workplace, where she posed as a dedicated professional, our friends, who believed her lies. For days, I maintained normalcy. Ate with my son, went to work, stayed silent, while she drifted through the house, sensing the storm but powerless to stop it. When she finally asked, her voice quaking, "Are you going to leave me?" I offered a faint smile. "Not just leaving. I'm going to show the world who you really are." She thought the police discovering Nick's body was her lowest moment. She was mistaken. The true devastation was coming, and I'd ensure it struck with full force. The reckoning arrived on a calm Saturday, when people were at ease, unaware of the chaos I was about to unleash. First, I sent the evidence to her family. Her parents and siblings received her messages mocking me, plotting to drain me, and gloating about her affair. The family that once revered her perfect marriage now saw her true nature. Her mother's desperate calls went unanswered. Next, I targeted her workplace, emailing her boss selected messages sent from her company account during work hours, labeled employee misconduct, urgent. By Monday, whispers engulfed her office, her career teetering on the brink. Finally, I shared screenshots in our friend group's chat, letting her own words unmask her. Friends who once admired her turned away, some in shock, others in revulsion. When the calls poured in, she broke, sobbing, screaming, begging me to stop. "You've destroyed me," she cried. I met her gaze and said softly, "No, you destroyed yourself. I just let the truth free." She thought her affair was the betrayal, but forcing me and our son to live in her lies was the real crime. With her reputation shattered, her job in jeopardy, and her family's respect gone, she finally felt the weight of betraying me. The public humiliation crushed her ego, but I sought a lasting reckoning, one she could never escape. The divorce hearings began, and she entered the courtroom a shell of herself, clutching papers with shaking hands. Her confidence vanished. My lawyer presented the evidence methodically. Hotel receipts, lavish dinner charges, emails and texts deriding me, neighbor accounts of Nick's frequent visits, and my son's heartbreaking statement about being forced to lie. Her lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, but the judge dismissed it. The evidence was undeniable. The courtroom grew quiet when my son's affidavit was read, his words about keeping secrets for his mother resonating painfully. The judge's gavel fell like a final judgment. Full custody to me, no alimony, no assets for her, and a stern rebuke for her deceit. She left with nothing, just as she'd once planned to leave me. Her mocking words, "I'll bleed you dry, take custody, leave you with nothing," turned against her. Now my son and I live in peace, our home cleansed of lies and shadows. Sometimes, passing the hallway mirror, I recall her taunts, her laughter, but feel only satisfaction. My silence wasn't weakness. It was the weapon that undid her. Was this justice deserved? Share your thoughts below. If this story strikes a chord, pass it on to someone who needs its fire. Stay tuned for more tales of betrayal and retribution, where every lie meets its truth.